Okay, I want to introduce the next speaker, who is Jackie Parsons, also an enrolled member of the Blackfeet tribe and a lifelong resident who lives on a ranch near Star School with her husband Kenneth and 6 of her children. She's gone around the Indian circuit as far as schools are concerned. She went to Browning Public Schools, the Chamorro Indian School in Oregon, the Haskell Institute in Lawrence, Kansas. She's gone to the Flathead Community College, the Northern Montana College, and Indian Studies in the National Indian Court Judges Association. She's a former judge. She has worked as a secretary for the tribe, a nutrition technician, a home economic specialist, prosecutor and judge, as I said, for the tribe, and is now the executive director of the Northern Plains Indian Crafts Association, which is located at the Museum of the Plains Indian in Browning. So, this is Jackie.
Thank you. If you don't hear me, just kind of raise your hand and I'll adjust the microphone. But my presentation to you today is going to be on the educational movement of the Blackfeet. And one of the things that prompted me to write this book is the fact that I started visiting with a lot of elders when I was working in the nutrition program and found out that there's all these books written about Blackfeet people by non-Indians. And a lot of it's not true. So I thought, well, this is interesting. Maybe I should do something like that, and this is what prompted me to write the book. So I will do my presentation on the educational movement. Education. What is the meaning of education to education? To most people, education means acquiring knowledge. In the early days when the mighty red man was being conquered, education had a far different meaning. It meant becoming indoctrinated into a complete different culture while trying to retain their own original values. If the different races could accept people for what they are and not intimidate them into thinking they are subhuman, they would find that every race in the world has something genuine and unique to offer. In the case of the Indian people, they had a high form of democracy. They had a remarkable sense of, responsibility to their teachers, to their children. A child at a very early age was taught profound fundamentals of life, the men teaching the boys, the women teaching the girls. They lived hand in hand with nature, knowing how to survive in their surroundings. In 1836, there was approximately 18,000 Blackfeet Indians. During the next 3 years, smallpox was carried to Blackfeet camps. 2/3 of the population died from this disease. It was during this time that the Jesuit priests started their missionary work with the Blackfeet. They were the first white people to go into Blackfeet country. Due to the mistrust and hostility toward the priests, they left Blackfeet country and did not return until 3 years later in 1840. They found the Blackfeet confused and defeated. They could no longer defend their territory because of the small number that had survived the smallpox epidemic. The people probably realized that they had to trust someone, so they allowed the black robes to stay. Thus, the education of the Blackfeet began with these priests. They started teaching English and catechism, but immediately saw the need for a more lasting and stable development. The Jesuits' goal was to establish a mission in order to give the Blackfeet people stability, to survive in a foreign culture that was fast enveloping Blackfeet territory by white settlers. In looking back at this time period, one must remember that education not only meant learning about God and English, it meant learning a host of small things, like learning how to wear clothes, sleep in a bed, sit in a chair, use a knife and fork, button a button, to tell time and everything needed to know about foreign culture that they were being indoctrinated into. 19 years of painstaking work with the Blackfeet, the Jesuits' first mission school became a reality. Before I go into the different segments of the education of the Blackfeet, I would like to tell you that there were 5 different types of schools available to the Blackfeet. There was mission schools, government boarding schools on the reservation, government boarding schools off the reservation, government day schools, public and private schools on the Blackfeet Reservation. So I will begin with the mission schools. In the year 1859, the first mission school was opened for the Blackfeet Indians near Shoto, Montana, which was reservation land at that time. 3 log cabins were erected and called the St. Peter's Mission. This was the first St. Peter's Mission. The site was abandoned in 1862 and moved to a more suitable location at the mouth of the Sun River. It became the new St. Peter's Mission. Up until that time, boys were the only ones taught. And the first second St. Peter's Mission burned down, and it was moved again to the new St. Peter's site, and that was still on the Sun River. The reason they didn't want to rebuild it, and it was decided to move the site and enlarge the school at that time because they were getting more students enrolled. In 1884, the Ursuline nuns arrived at St. Peter's Mission, and the girls were immediately initiated to education. Blackfeet students were continuing to attend this school and continued to attend it until it closed. In the year 1883, a small one-room mission school was opened at Robert, that is right across the Birch Creek River on the reservation. Only a few Indian children were taught due to the fact that they had to sneak across the Birch Creek River to be taught by the Catholic priests, because at that time they were parceled out to the Protestants because they would go, like one tribe would go to the Catholics, one would go to the Protestants. And even though the Catholics were the first to be on the reservation, we were given to the Protestants, so they had to sneak back over to their priests to learn what they were teaching them because the Protestants were falling short from teaching them anything. So this became a small mission, and a few children that came to the priests were taught at that time. In 1887, Chief Whitecalf contributed land to the Jesuit priests to build a mission school for the Blackfeet. This was built and opened in 1890 on the Two Medicine River for 100 students ages 6 to 15 years of age. It closed in December 1939. Government boarding schools on the Blackfeet Reservation. In 1892, the Willow Creek School, a government boarding school, opened for 101 students. This school operated continuously until a fire destroyed the school and the site was moved to the Cut Bank Boarding Creek. In 1904, the Cut Bank Creek Boarding School was opened for 125 students. This school operated until 1934 when it closed for a period of 4 years. The reason for closure of this school, the Bureau was trying to phase out and shift the responsibility to the public school district. This school was reopened in the year 1937-38 due to pressure from the local public. At this time, it is still operating, but strictly as a boarding dormitory. Government day schools. The first government day schools opened in 1915. They were at Hart Butte, Old Agency, and Star School. These are the only 3 rural schools still operating today on the reservation. Croft, Chief Allover, Higgins, Fisher Flat, Mad Plume, Durham, Cold Feet, Swims Under, Upper Birch Creek, Little Badger, Heavy Breast, and Camp 9 opened in 1933 under the Public Work Administration's grants. These smaller schools were to phase out with the advent of better roads, consolidating with the larger rural schools. As funding of these schools were turned over to district management, economically it was not feasible to continue operating these small rural schools. It was more economical to bus these children to the larger remaining day schools or into Browning. Public and private schools on the reservation. The first public school opened at Four Persons Agency at Shoto, Montana for 26 students in 1872. Lasted until 1876. The school closed because of poor attendance. Elton, a little town up in the Babb Valley, opened in 1898 for white children only. Elton was a silver and copper mining boom town located in the Babb Valley. It existed until 1900 when a new school was built on the St. Mary's River and called the Babb School. Another new site was chosen and a school building built in 1939 that still stands today. It's still in operation, but annexed with School District Number 9 in 1972. The first public school opened in Browning in 1905 for 20 students. Due to the increase in enrollment, another room was added the following year. This did not take care of the heavy enrollment, and the school was taught in rented buildings until 1910, when a new school was built. This school was considered too great an expense to the district and was moved to the present site of the elementary school and had a dormitory attached to it. In 1920, the new Browning School opened at the present site of the elementary school and housed all 12 grades. Up to that time, it only went through 1 through 8. Mr. Douglas Gold was the first superintendent. In 1936, a new addition was added to the school under the WPA. In 1936, 100 years after the first white person set foot on Blackfeet land, the first 2 full-blooded Indians graduated from high school. A new school was completed in 1954, housing grades 9 through 12. In 1956, the K.W. Bergen School was completed for grades K through 3. In 1966, 5 portable classrooms were rented for grade 2. In 1967, the Vina Chatton School was completed for grades 4 through 6. Because of the heavy enrollment of the district, they had to rent the Catholic Center for grades 5. In 1974, a new junior high school was completed and started operation, with a gym added in 1976. This filled the need for the enrollment at this time, but there will always be a need for new schools because of the increase in the enrollment. The old Babb School, New Babb School, Camp 9, Carway, Hilton's, Galbraith, Pescan, DeBray, Kraft, St. Mary's, DeWolf, Bird, Paisley, Cutfinger, Pontresina, Heavy Runner, Blackfeet, Croft Wren, Big Lake, Revis, Mad Plume, Seville, and Hamilton were the public and private schools that opened on the reservation. These schools were to open and close intermittently due to weather conditions, teacher shortage, family transiency, and funding. These schools housed grades 1 through 8. If a student was to continue his education, he either had to go to a government boarding school off the reservation, the family had to move into Browning, or the student had to board with relatives or live at the Browning boarding dormitory. Since the flood in 1964, approximately 25% of the reservation population had to relocate. This relocation was in or near the town of Browning. Today's schools on the reservation. From the numerous schools that once existed on the Blackfeet Reservation, we see only 4 of these schools operating today: Babb, Hart Butte, Star, and Browning. The Babb School has approximately 40 students enrolled, grades K through 8. Grades 7 and 8 have their choice of attending school at Babb or busing into Browning. Hart Butte is operating for grades K through 8 and have students attending there. And they just built a new high school there last year. Star is operating for grades 1 through 4 and have approximately 35 students attending. In 1974, the original school that was built in 1915 was condemned and destroyed in May of 1976. 4 trailers now house the students at Star School. They have since then built a new school there and are incorporated into that now. A Head Start and kindergarten building was constructed in 1969. Browning is the backbone for education on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation at this time. The Browning schools service 2,150 students K through 12. The system is now running buses to every part of the reservation. This is not only more economical to have the students centralized, but it gives a student a chance to compete scholastically, since he is in a group with his peers. This system also gives the student a chance to participate in extracurricular activities, exposing him to a broader sense of values. The Browning school system today is a Class A accredited school system. Off-reservation boarding schools attended by the Blackfeet Reservation Indians, there was about 20% at this time attending these schools. Up to one time we had at least 50%. There's, I'll just give you a list of the names because I think I'm running short of time, am I?
Another 5 minutes.
There was Genoa, Nebraska, Carlisle, Pennsylvania, Flandreau, South Dakota, Chemawa, Oregon, Busby, Montana, Chilocco, Oklahoma, Fort Sill, Oklahoma, Lawton, Oklahoma, Haskell, Kansas, Riverside, Oklahoma, Wahpeton, North Dakota, Concho, Oklahoma, Pierre, South Dakota, Fort Shaw, Montana, Intermountain, Utah. Funding, these were all the government reservation government boarding schools that the Blackfeet did attend throughout the years. Funding for the schools has always been a problem. Most of the schools were always funded through government programs until up into 1934. They had the Johnson-O'Malley Act, and this act authorized the Secretary of Interior to enter into contracts with the states or territories for the education, medical attention, and social welfare of Indians. In 1936, the same act was amended by the state of Montana and used this money strictly for a hot lunch program for the American Indians who was 1/4 degree or over. Although this money was intended for supplemental money to consider the needs of Indian children that were not being met under other federal programs, it was not until 1969, under the direction of Mr. Earl Barlow, a Blackfeet Indian, that this money was taken from the lunch program and used for the purpose it was enacted for. It is now operating under PL 9363 for the purpose of self-determination and for Indian education. It goes on, they had Title I money, ESEA Act money that they were granted in 1965, and this program was for disadvantaged students to equalize educational benefits for deprived children who should be educated. 1976 for the funding. Up to 1979, there was approximately 29% county money, 39% state money, 30% federal money, and 2% other monies that operated School District 9, which costs approximately $4.6 million a year to operate. In reviewing the past 139 years, one can see that the Blackfeet people have progressed dynamically. However, one must never forget that the progress has been damaged with much bloodshed, heartache, prejudice caused mainly by government oppression. It is said time eases all pain. For the Blackfeet people, yes, time is easing the pain of losing the culture they once possessed. It is sad that the future generations will be deprived of sharing a way of life that wanted for nothing. To the Indian people of today and to the coming generations, will they preserve what is left of the beautiful Blackfeet culture, never forgetting the proud race of people that they are descended from? Will they strive for progress and lead their people successfully in the coming generations through education, the only recognizable peaceful method? These questions will be answered in the years to come. Let us hope that through education, the next 139 years will be peaceful and prosperous for this proud race of people.